Number 7. Launched in March 1968 as a facelift of the XR, the XT GT kept the basic formula of big family sedan, angry V8, but turned the wick up a little. Under the bonnet sat a 302 Windsor V8 with about 172 kilowatts, up on the XR's 289, backed by a 4-speed manual or a new 3-speed auto for executives who like to go fast in comfy shoes. They gave it a mean blacked-out tail that basically started a Falcon GT styling tradition. It wasn't just a straight-line hero either. Period tests saw around 0 to 100 in the mid-8s and the quarter-mile in the high 15s. Solid numbers for a full-size four-door in the late 60s. On the track, the XT GT lived a hectic life. It was on course for Bathurst glory in 1968, before a rock punched a hole in the radiator and handed the race to Holden's new HK Monaro GTS 327. But the XT GT hit back hard in long-distance events. A trio of factory-backed cars finished 3rd, 6th, and 8th in the epic London-Sydney Marathon to win the team's prize. And another XT GT took outright victory in the 1969 Rothmans 12-hour at Surfers Paradise. Only about 1,415 XT GTs were built, making them properly collectible today. Number 6. Up to 1962, Aussie Fairlanes were big tank barges. But then the US mid-size Fairlane arrived, locally assembled from CKD kits at Homebush, and quickly nicknamed the Compact Fairlane. By the time the FD landed in April 1964, it was the last and most refined of the compact trio, with the tail fins shaved off and a neat new grille with 7 vertical bars giving it a cleaner, more modern face. Under the bonnet, Ford offered proper V8 credentials, a 260 Windsor or a 289 Windsor, both smooth, lazy cruisers aimed at executives who like their luxury with a bit of burble. Only around 1,344 FD Fairlanes were built in Australia, plus a few hundred CKD cars in New Zealand. The FD also had an awkward job in life. It had barely settled into showrooms before Ford Australia decided to chase full-size glamour with locally assembled Galaxies. Then later, the long-wheelbase ZA Fairlane. So the 1964 Compact FD became a one-year, end-of-the-line special. The last US Fairlane sold here before the big Aussie luxury era kicked off. Number 5. Before the XR, Falcons were honest 6-cylinder family taxis. But Ford Australia had Bathurst on the brain and needed something with more grunt. So they grabbed the new XR Falcon sedan, slipped in the 289 Windsor V8 from the Mustang, firmed up the suspension, added front disc brakes, and created a V8-powered rocket that still had room for the kids and the esky. Ford painted almost all of them in a loud GT gold with black stripes, just in case anyone missed the point at the traffic lights, and they came only with a 4-speed manual. The XR GT's big claim to fame, of course, is Bathurst 1967, where Harry Firth and Fred Gibson hustled a Falcon GT to outright victory at the Hardy Ferodo 500, officially kicking off the Ford versus Holden war that would dominate Aussie motorsport for decades. Ford initially planned just 260 cars to homologate the GT, but demand went nuts, and they ended up building around 596 units, plus a tiny handful in special colors, like Gallagher Silver, which are now lottery-level rare. Number 4. Based on the US 69 Plymouth Fury fuselage body, the DE Phoenix arrived as Chrysler's Aussie flagship. All smooth curves, acres of chrome, and more bonnet than most people's entire carport. For 1969, it was marketed as the Dodge Phoenix 400 Limited Edition. Each car wearing an individually numbered dash badge, so owners could brag they had number 284 of 400 at the pub. In theory, Chrysler planned 400 sedans and 400 pillarless hardtops, but reality and Aussie demand meant the numbers were lower, with only 371 DEs built in 1969 and a further 385 in 1970. Under the bonnet, sedans generally ran the trusty 318 V8, while hardtops scored the 383 Big Block, both hooked to a 3-speed TorqueFlite auto. The 400 Limited Edition sat right at the top of Chrysler's local range, loaded with power steering, plush trim, and the kind of presence that made Kingswoods look like economy cars. Number 3. The XW Falcon itself arrived in '69 as a facelifted, tougher-looking Falcon, and the regular XW GT already packed a 351 Windsor V8 with about 290 horsepower, bigger brakes, a 3.25-to-1 differential, and a huge 36-gallon fuel tank, basically a long-range weapon for fast country runs. Then, in August 1969, Ford quietly told its dealers about a new GT handling option package, which in reality meant Bathurst Special, please drive sensibly. Yeah, right. The HO swapped the Autolite carb for a 600 cubic feet per minute Holly, added a hotter cam, alloy inlet, heavier duty driveline, and beefed up suspension, squeezing the 351 to a claimed 300 horsepower, and turning the GT into something that could live flat out down Conrad Straight all day. Built specifically as a homologation special, only about 260 Windsor-powered XW GT HOs were produced. The car made its Bathurst debut at the 1969 Hardy-Ferodo 500, where 14 GT HOs lined up against Holden's new HT Monaro GTS 350. On raw speed, the Fords were terrifying. But a dodgy tire choice meant extra pit stops, and the best they could manage was second behind the Monaro. Number 2. The regular EH was already a hit with its new red 6 and crisp styling. But Holden wanted a weapon for the Armstrong 500 at Mount Panorama. So, in September 1963, they quietly cooked up the S4, a special sedan that had been to the gym. Under the bonnet sat the hot 179 red motor with a tuned Stromberg carb, hooked to a strengthened 3-speed manual, heavier clutch, and bigger tailshaft. All the stuff your uncle swore he didn't modify. Externally, it looked almost like any other EH special, no big stripes or wings, which made it the ultimate Q car. Apart from the slightly tougher stance, and, on race cars, the inevitable white roundels and sponsor stickers. At Bathurst 1963, the EH S4s were quick but unlucky, losing out to the Ford Cortinas on fuel and tires. Yet they laid the groundwork for the whole idea of an Aussie Bathurst special. Number 1. In the mid-60s, Ford had already tasted success at the Armstrong 500 with regular Cortina GTs. But rivals were closing in, so Ford Australia told racing mastermind Harry Firth, "Build us something that can't lose." The result was the GT 500, Ford's first true Aussie homologation special, created purely to win the 1965 Bathurst 500. Based on the 1500 GT, it kept the 1.5-liter Kent 4, but Firth reworked it with a hotter cam, higher compression, and revised head and bottom end, so it could scream to over 7,000 RPM all day without spitting its guts out. The GT 500's real party trick, though, was endurance. Firth added an auxiliary fuel tank plumbed into the standard one, giving roughly 77 liters total, and separate fillers so both tanks could be refueled at once, slashing pit stop time and making mini-teams very nervous. Bathurst rules only required 100 locally built examples to homologate a model, so Ford commissioned just over the minimum. At the 1965 Armstrong 500, the Fairfield Motors Cortina GT 500, driven by Barry Seaton and Midge Bosworth, took outright victory. The first officially recognized Bathurst winner and a huge marketing coup for Ford.